Hello and welcome again to this edition of Fight TV. I'm your host, Brad Swanson. We are coming to you just a few blocks from Florida's capital in the midst of the 2022 Florida legislative session. We are joined by none other than Ryan Tyson with the Tyson Group and Nick Catroppo of the ever-famous Florida Chamber's Political Operations Division. We have two amazing professionals in the game, and while we're always talking policy and politics of what's in the Capitol right now, these gentlemen are looking far beyond that into what's going to happen in the election. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
All right, so we can't ignore impacts potentially of the session. What do you both view as kind of hot ticket items that are going to potentially find their ways into 8 billion pieces of mail that we're all going to get over the election cycle? Nick, let's start with you.
No, thanks, Brad. Look, I think this session at the top of everyone's list when it comes to when we're looking at the 2022 ballot is what's going to happen with redistricting.
Yeah.
We've seen some maps come out over the past few weeks. Committees are advancing those maps. The governor released a map regarding congressional districts over the weekend. So I think that at the top of everyone's list is going to be at the forefront of everyone's mind as we move to the 22 election. But then there's also other things, like we're talking about inflation. We're talking about keeping items on shelves here in the state of Florida in grocery stores. But then even further than that, we're still in the midst of a pandemic, and we're looking for COVID protections for businesses and extending those for healthcare companies.
Right.
So I think there are a lot of things at the forefront of people's minds, but I think ultimately at the end of the day, session ends, the conversation is going to be about redistricting as members move into re-elections and new candidates start to file.
Ryan?
Yeah, totally agree with that. I mean, obviously the governor's got a very broad, very bold agenda that he's put forth for the legislature. Yes, I totally agree. Redistricting will dominate their the personal goals of everybody that's over there. But I think it would be wrong for us to not discuss that this session is occurring in what increasingly seems to be a critical pocketbook crisis for a lot of Floridians. There are problems with food on shelves, gas prices, quality of life issues are starting to really come to the forefront as this economic crisis that we're starting to enter into. So I would say that as this session winds down and we head into the political cycle, volatility will continue to be the issue that we watch most. And really because of the national scene that's happening, that's just coming all down. Right. And I think that'll be something that'll be a concern for the Democrats.
Well, on top of that, you look at some of these, and I'm not going to call them Easter eggs because all of us know why they're there, but you look at the governor's effort to get rid of the gas tax, right? Mm-hmm. And while that is an immediate pocketbook hit and a legitimate piece of policy, that is also a huge piece of political policy as well to throw out there. Takes on an item like that for maybe a non-partisan voter, but I mean everyone's a little partisan, but a MPA voter.
It'd be a big deal. It's a pocketbook issue. It hits them right immediately. It'll be something very populist, very popular with those kind of voters.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move into looking at where Florida is today. We always do comparisons of how we move and we change. And Ryan, I'm going to start with you on the bigger picture. And we know the Florida scorecard has these, and the political program has these ultra granular looks. We know you do it too, but we're going to start with you on the big picture. When we look at the change in Florida's electorate, what's influencing the change, and what's the voter going to look like when we get to this year's election that's going to be different from last time?
I don't know that we have enough time on the show to really get into this because
here's 19,000 micro tabs of how Florida's
It's true. I mean,
right?
Nick and I have talked about this before, but we are both witnessing the sharpest shift in the shortest amount of time that we've ever seen politically in this state. It's like our DNA. The political DNA of the state has literally shifted within the last 2 years. And I think it all centers around COVID, the pandemic. Once the pandemic started, the governor had a style of leadership. He had a way that he wanted to approach the pandemic. And it's something that many on the left don't like about him, but most on the right, they've endeared to him because of this. And we've seen so many people leave these blue states and come to Florida to the point to where they're fueling a voter registration surge that we're seeing for the Republicans in the state of Florida. But ideologically speaking as well, you're seeing this state start to attack pretty hard to the right in a really short amount of time. And it's been pretty remarkable as we watch these month-to-month reports come in and you actually see the results of the boots on the ground that are moving here.
Right. So before we really dive into the new voters, Nick, give our viewers a little bit of history. Circa 6, circa 8. how big was the gap between the Democrats, which were the juggernaut, and we still performed in the red, to where are we now?
Yeah, so Ryan's exactly right, though. The policies of the governor, you've seen a transformation in the state and people moving here. 800 net new people a day that are coming to Florida. You see the voter registration side of that. But to your point, you look back to the first Obama year in 2008, right? Democrats had about a 700,000.
700,000. It still astounds me to hear that number.
700,000 voter registration lead. Now, as shared, Ryan, we're at 44,000 Republican lead over the past year. And
so we haven't just dropped. The Republicans are now ahead.
And then when you look at regions in the state of where those changes are happening, I mean, look, we're seeing it statewide, but you look at Hispanic areas, Ryan shared earlier, of what's happening in Miami-Dade County. We saw the swing from the 2020 to the 2016 election on behalf of President Trump compared to Hillary Clinton and Trump performance in 2016. Drastic changes happening.
What a difference 6 years make. I can remember, back in the day, we were in everyone's war rooms going, okay, this is what we were all bracing ourselves for, was the inevitable. We swung well to the right and we were going to swing back to the left potentially post-Obama because they'd done such a great job on this. But that hasn't been the case at all.
I want to say this too, because a lot of folks are trying to dismiss the why it's relevant, these voter stats that Nick's talking about. First of all, if you look and compare from the last midterm to today, there's 1 million more registrants than there were in 2018.
Right.
So I think it makes that R+ advantage that much more significant, in my opinion.
Right.
Secondly, I'd say it's also important because 72% of the registered voters in this state still pick a party. Okay? And the Republicans have an advantage of those folks. So it's wrong to dismiss that. It's a very key shift that we're seeing. I mean, when you look at 2020 and you see the growth that Republicans enjoyed with Hispanic voters specifically, maintaining high numbers and approval with whites, shifting into a midterm where there now are only more of those voters.
Right. So let's start parsing what the new Florida voter looks like a little bit. And I know we don't have enough time for 5 hours of that conversation.
You're going to have to invite us back.
Right. Always. You're always invited back. You can call me and say, hey, we're doing a show. We got some new data. But we look at party switching. We talked about that before we jumped into this interview off camera. Why the party switch? And then the second part of that would be is talk to us a little bit about the Florida model or how it's sold politically, nationally, and who are these new people moving here, and can we pin them down on any one esprit de corps that that's gonna show up on the ballot box?
So look, I'll start, and then Ryan, I know you can dive more into some of the granular side of it, but I think overview of it, it's the brand of Florida. For the time that we have here today, it's the brand of Florida. That's why people are coming here. That is why they're registering the way that they're registering. Parents are coming here to put their kids in school. Families are coming down for quality of life. Living closer to our beautiful beaches here in the state. Living closer to our wonderful cities that are half or if a quarter of the price of a northern city. And they see that the great work that our Florida legislature, our governor and cabinet are doing here, and they want to be a part of it.
So just the quality of life, we were killing the nation just in general before COVID, and now hashtag Free Florida is one of the major trending things because you can still live with safety, but still live a free life here. Ryan, what are you seeing?
The thing I would add, totally agree with Nick, I would say juxtaposing that to the national scene.
Yeah.
All right, you see, number one, Gallup came out with data the other day as it relates to party ID, Republicans overtaking Democrats for the first time in a long time as we prepare for this midterm. The president's at historically low job approval numbers nationally for at this point in his term. Now let's, like I said, juxtapose that down here. The president in Florida right now has the lowest job approval numbers for any statewide elected figure that I've ever seen in the state of Florida. And that is such a big deal when you look at the makeup of this state right now as we prepare to go into this midterm with this national referendum that appears to be shaping up. The last time I was in the field, I think I had the president at maybe 36, 35% job approval. That was last year. I wouldn't be shocked if it's even lower than that right now.
Is he in the 20s, do you think?
Very likely could be. Very likely could be. He was tanking with Hispanics. He's been tanking with independents. He has been tanking. He's had 60% disapproval disapproval with white voters in Florida dating back to last Thanksgiving. So I feel like you've got the free Florida sales pitch, come down here, it's working. The way the governor's marketing the state is definitely working. And then when you juxtapose that with the national problem, this place is, Florida's become the tip of the spear, if you would.
Yeah. Nick?
Ryan couldn't be more right on the direction of the nation compared to the direction of Florida. You know, we polled recently and we saw, you know, voters here in the state, you know, direction of the nation completely upside down compared to what they think of here in Florida. You know, and we've been tracking it over the past year, and we would never, I would say, not doing well, but numbers are just rising over the past 6 months here in terms of Florida, Floridians liking Florida and liking the track that we're on. Right. So when you ask the right direction, wrong track question, Florida compared to the nation, I mean, the nation is just underwater.
You know, so as different as we are, right, and you think about these new voters that are coming in, you know, we'll go down a couple of routes. And I'm going to say, with that trend in mind, are the Democrats who live in these other states that might, and I see two types in my personal life. I see the ideologues, and I see kind of the blue dogs, or we vote Democrat because we always have. Those ones are like, okay, enough is enough already. Are we seeing those type of Democrats coming into the state and maybe being part of that party switching mode? I
do think that we see that. Okay. I absolutely do. I mean, Florida has always had a white Democrat cohort that votes Republican. Mm-hmm. I think there are slightly more of them now, but I also think that there's a large number of them are coming from these states. You know, the state of Florida does track in some counties that ask for it. What's the state that you moved from? And you're seeing a clear advantage from some of these Midwestern and Northeastern states as they move down here. They're registering Republican.
Are you seeing the Democrats with the influx of are you seeing any gains for them? Are they having
no, sir, anywhere. So, according to our
not
tracking,
anywhere even geographically.
No, sir. According
to
our tracking data, Republicans have now out-registered Democrats for 20 of the last 21 months. Okay,
it's unheard of.
Yeah, the new registrant trend, when I say new registrant, I mean true new registrant. You didn't exist on the file before, you do now. Republicans have been beating Democrats. It's about a 20,000 margin for the last several months, and it's just been a consistent thing. And I think there's a lot of organic activity that's driving this. Okay. And you know, when you look on the left right now, you have to ask yourself, what are they offering the people of Florida, right? And I think the governor's made that really clear. You saw that in the State of the State speech. We're not going to be locked down. People are going to be able to have their liberties, and that's a message that's selling with the Florida voter right now, which is why the governor is sitting somewhere around 60% job approval, just under it, which is remarkable in the state of Florida.
All right, so we've got about a minute left, and I know we could spend hours with both of you hearing the insights and the data. So as we're slaying sacred cows with the new DNA of the Florida voter, this may be the first time a governor has coattails. We know the president elections always have coattails. Are we going to see, Nick, we'll start with you, coattail voter surges for some of these, maybe the new +9 and the new +3 Democrat districts, but are we going to see coattails for Republicans in this election?
Absolutely. We're going to see that statewide. You know, the governor's job approval paired with the brand of Florida. You know, Mark shares, if, you know, Florida was a stock, he would buy as much as he can afford of it. Right. And I think that resonates with every resident here in the state of Florida. So I think we're going to see that, you know, statewide.
Right. So I don't mean to cut you off, but we're short on time, Ryan. In the previous elections, candidates were hesitant, and it was a risk to attach yourself to President Trump in some of these, but some would do it, some wouldn't. Is it going to be absolutely beneficial for all Republican candidates to attach themselves to Governor DeSantis' message in this next one?
The data seems to indicate it is absolutely okay to do that. I mean, again, the state has changed, and there's that would be a very welcomed thing, I think, for most of them to do. It would be wise.
Does the governor, if the governor wins, are we looking at +3 percentage points of a win? I know that's
I really think it comes down
it's usually so much smaller than that.
It really comes down to a variable that we don't know, and it's, are the Democrats able to turn out?
Yeah.
We don't know the answer to that. What we do know is that the enthusiasm and the intensity of the Republican base that is growing, there's no question they are ready to vote for Ron DeSantis.
Wow. I think that's the biggest indicator as well, just on that point. I mean, the enthusiasm of voters in the state on the Republican side, there's no enthusiasm amongst Democrats here in the state right now.
Wow.
And you can see that down ballot as candidate recruitment, and you can see that in polling numbers.
Well, gents, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. We can't wait to have you guys back on. We're definitely going to have to do this cyclically as we get closer to the election, but for now, that's all the time we have. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Brad.
That's all the time we have for this episode of Phi TV. For more great interviews like this one, make sure you hit us up on our social media feed. And for now, thanks for tuning in.